Binance has been kind of an ongoing article of interest for the past couple of months, kind of in the wake of the FTX collapse and a lot of skepticism around centralized exchanges. The first part of this two-part story is kind of the less interesting, which is just that 3 U.S. senators have sent a public letter to Binance asking for a lot of information that, frankly, they're probably not going to get, but alleging with some cause that Binance has enabled a lot of criminal activity and also concealed financial information from customers, which we're going to talk about more in the second part of our first half here. We got, I'm not going to unpack it entirely, but we did get a response from a Binance spokesperson to that letter, which frankly echoes some of the issues that we have seen in communications from Binance recently, which is that they are fairly vague, hand wavy. I think that the funny part about this statement is that it says, we look forward to correcting the record. We're not going to do it now, but we look forward to correcting the record at some point. And that has been, in general, Binance's attitude, and we'll see more of that in a bit. The one thing I would note is that of the 3 senators, one of them is Elizabeth Warren, who frankly, whatever you feel about her in other realms, has sort of burned some of her powder as a crypto critic already, and not necessarily to the most effective use. So it's sometimes a little bit harder to take things seriously when it comes from Warren, but it is true that Binance has left a lot of unanswered questions. So this, it remains to be seen how much they can stay out of U.S. regulators' grasps, but they're certainly being reached for.
One of the things that really stood out to me with the way that Binance has been responding to this is there is a lot of, as you say, misdirection, but there's also a lot of suspicion of the media. And one of the things that, in the years that I think that you and I have covered crypto, David, is that there are some serious problems with companies and the way that they deal with the media in the first place, where they don't give straight answers or they're not accessible to answer questions. And when you do ask and try to do a complete article that presents both sides, they come to you after you've already published the article with new information that, they should have been upfront with in the first place. They also, and I've seen this with many companies, and we're seeing a lot of evidence of this in Binance as well, they don't have their message straight in the first place. You have person A saying one thing, which contradicts what person B is saying, who is maybe looking at it from a different angle from person C, who then says something completely different, which ends up with a very confusing and hard to swallow narrative. And I'm seeing this in Binance right now, but this has been, I think, a trend. And then they get all upset when we have journalists who come in and write articles that say win poke awards and take down entire industries, as we've done here at CoinDesk. And it only happens when we ask questions. Are we publishing these articles? Do we want people to read them? Absolutely. But there's a reason why journalists ask questions, and there's a reason why we write the stories we write. And this is one of the things that companies are just, if you can't answer the questions, then, maybe there is something wrong that needs to be addressed. What do you think, Zach?
Yeah, well stated on the media angle for sure. I want to just zoom out a little bit. I think it's, it's hunting season, and it is big game season, and U.S. regulators are doing their best to hit that target that's sitting squarely on the back of CZ and Binance here and now. Whether or not they have sort of jurisdictional abilities to go and do this may not matter. Obviously, a little bit of this is grandstanding, but I think U.S. regulators and lawmakers are really looking for a big win on crypto, and they see no bigger opportunity to do that than with Binance. So the idea that this scrutiny is here is something that I think is obviously in reaction to the FTX thing. They want to see if they can get ahead of the next one. And they sort of have this hunch that Binance may be that next big one that could leave investors in the US and beyond in trouble. So that's, I think, is part of it. And I think, David, you're right to sort of point out that Liz Warren has not maybe been the most reliable narrator on crypto issues of late. So I think that is interesting also to flag that she's among this cohort of lawmakers asking for a bit more clarity. Interesting to see what the correcting of the record looks like here. But I'll toss it back to you, David.
Yeah, I will just make two last comments about this part of the story, and then we'll move on to talk perhaps in more granular detail about media. But it is, somebody might be able to correct me here, but I was looking, and the most recent information that I could find was that Binance does, among other things, still have zero KYC options for users. They lowered their withdrawal limits recently to a fairly low level, but that doesn't mean it's zero. And at the same time, if you have no KYC, you then can get the equivalent of a centralized exchange Sybil attack. If you can make one non-KYC account, you can make 100. So there are real grounded reasons for these concerns. Obviously, Binance has also engaged in some regulatory arbitrage by being a little bit opaque about where it's actually based, where it's regulated over the years. So it's important to remember that Binance has kind of made its bed here. So even while people are kind of fighting the last war and paranoid because of FTX, as a great man once said, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not after you. And Binance could very well be after your money.